Please briefly summarize your industry education and professional background.
So I have been doing educational projects for over 30 years. Yes, that means I started when I was 3. Just kidding. And in a variety of sizes and ranges, everything from K through 12 and even pre-K all the way up through very sophisticated high-end higher ed projects. I've been with Perkins&Will for about 12 years, and I lead the education practice in the Austin office that I opened about 10 years ago.
How does Perkins&Will fit into the infrastructure industry?
Well, I would say Perkins&Will is very much about making places for people. We're really concerned about the environment. We're concerned about making sure that the spaces that are designed and the building infrastructure that's out there is aligned to what people need in terms of living design. And in living design, we sort of tie in all aspects of health, wellness, inclusion, sustainability, resilience, all these kinds of things coming together so that our building infrastructure really fits up with what really the long-term needs are for people on the planet.
How would you describe adaptive reuse, and how is it being used in infrastructure?
So I think adaptive reuse is pretty amazing. You get to keep the history of the site and the history of the building, and it's a far more sustainable strategy sometimes than the clear cut everything down and start from scratch. In the industry, I think there is a lot of built work out there. Some of it is in great shape, some of it is in not so great shape, and really kind of looking at the assets of what's available in each property to determine what is the best and highest use for that facility and how it relates to the community that it's in, and what pieces are able to be reused and repurposed to create something that, again, isn't lost of its history, but is part of that community, but serves the community in new ways as communities continue to change.
Okay, can you talk a little bit more about how adaptive reuse works and in the design phase, like maybe use an example?
So our recent project with ACC Highland was an adaptive reuse of a 1970s mall. You think about, the anchor stores, the Dillards, the Pennies, and then all that space in the middle with all the little tiny shops. The mall had basically been defunct. The anchor stores moved out about 15 years ago. The inside of the mall was largely non-functioning. The area had come into a blighted area. Even the neighborhood around it became more and more blighted as the mall turned downhill. And we kind of thought about, how could this mall become something that becomes a new driver for the economy and a new driver for this community? ACC worked with Red Leaf as a co-developer, and Red Leaf basically took the gigantic wasted parking lots around the mall and turned those into mixed-use developments. And then ACC and Red Leaf added parking garage to serve this. But the heart of the mall, which had a lot of history and a lot of pieces to it, is now turned into a brand new state-of-the-art learning space for students. This site, again, big part of adaptive reuse is not losing the history of the site and the context. This site was originally the home of the St. John's encampment way back before it became a mall. And the St. John's encampment was a place where African American people came to learn trades and have religious services. So sometime after the encampment was purchased or maybe taken over to become this real estate property that was the mall, as the mall became defunct, we were able to turn this space back into a place of education and back into a place that was open to all levels of the community as a community college, to really uplift this community economically, and really considered ways that all of the programs inside it tied to the network of jobs in the surrounding areas, so that this adaptive reuse suddenly is no longer an economic drag on the community, but it is something that builds up and gives people opportunity again.
Okay, thanks. Just to clarify a couple of things, the ACC is the Austin Community College, is that correct?
Correct.
And also, can you describe a little bit more about what exactly happens for the adaptive design and reuse? What did they actually do to this mall?
We started with a salvage trip. we went through and walked through the mall and said, what here can we use again? And we even salvaged the glass out of the old storefronts of the stores. We salvaged the neon sign of the photo lab back when they did print and film labs. We salvaged Santa's chair for the theater arts program. So our first pieces was, what do we need to salvage? The next piece was, what can we not keep? Now, obviously, a mall is a different function than a community college, and they have different design load criteria and plumbing and infrastructure and electrical criteria and air conditioning criteria. So we went through and said, what is in too bad a shape to keep and what is not appropriate to keep. And then we did more evaluations on the foundations and the structure. The structure is very bouncy. You probably don't notice this when you're in a mall, but I would say they use pretty light structural systems. And when we started thinking about the programs that would go into this space, some of them weren't appropriate for a bouncy foundation, such as TV studios and recording studios. So then we began to look at the actual infrastructure of the mall and think about, where do we need tall volumes and what things should be on the lower level? Where can we cut holes in the floor so that we can have super tall spaces, such as a TV studio or recording studio? How do we work within the realm of the existing foundations? Another big piece to it was, malls are designed to be a place that you go in and get lost and can't find your way out. It's sort of purposeful in that function so that people continue to shop while they're wondering where the door is and where the exit is. Colleges aren't designed that way. They're really designed for ease of navigation. I need to quickly access something. So how did we transform that in the adaptive reuse to be navigatable, to let light in, to give wayfinding and direction? This place was a gigantic bunker with 0 windows. So the first thing we're looking at is, how can we cut holes in the walls? How can we cut holes in the roof? Well, then we ask ourselves the next question, which was, what stays and what goes? Our scope of work was around 420,000 square feet. And as we were looking at this big mall that is a bunker with no penetration, sitting in the middle of a mixed use development that students and the development could have real access to, in terms of being able to go to lunch, being able to interact in the community, the first thing we did was cut a chunk out of the mall all the way across. It was a very hard sell for the client. By the way, you just bought this giant building and we're going to take away this big swath of it. And but what it ended up doing is it created this paseo through the mall that allowed the work of ACC and its students to be on display and allowed the community to filter into that space. And then we packed the program on either side of this paseo with things that were very public facing. So ACC has a functioning restaurant that the community can come and have dinner. They have a functioning auditorium that the public can buy tickets to the performances they're doing. So you can come there and go dinner and a show while living in the mixed use community or hopping the train to get there. We also put on the edge their art gallery and their dance recital hall and this big maker space and infrastructure for places, for companies to come in and teach trades on machinery. So it was really about, how do you put ACC on display and how do you pull the community in and have the community interact? And I would say that's an unusual thing to do in an adaptive reuse, is to remove a giant part of the building, but it honestly made it work in this setting and made it work in the community and made us allowed to have a connection between the main entry of the mixed use and where the parking garage would be for ACC as well.
All right, that sounds great. And this project recently won an award from ULI Austin. Does that mean that it's basically finished and ready to be used?
Yes, they have moved in and have been teaching classes there, and it is fully functional. And yeah, the ULI Austin Award was pretty exciting in terms of their understanding of how this project builds the urban environment. And having an educational project at a center of a mixed use environment is not a normal move, but it's a really exciting move. And we also recently have been told that we've won an IIDA award for interior design in education on this project.
So are you currently working on any similar projects right now?
I am not currently working on an adaptive reuse project. I'm working on some higher ed work for the UT School of Public Health for their um, additions and or for the renovations to their spaces. I think it ties into ACC and thinking about how we promote healthy living spaces and how we promote movement and healthy materials and indoor air quality. That some of those same themes tie through, but it's a different scale of project, a little bit different approach.
So what advice can you give engineers and designers so that they can better incorporate sustainable and adaptive techniques?
I think the first thing is really analyze your site and really understand, what qualities can I keep, what qualities can I not. We did have quite a bit of lessons learned on ACC. We did discover under slab, there was not a lot of footings under the columns, and we had to do quite a bit of structural remedial work that we didn't expect. So I would say if you don't have quality building drawings, you should really go in and do some ground penetrating radar or something so that you really understand what the bones are. Because the first piece of adaptive reuse is knowing that your bones are in great shape. And then understanding what pieces you can carry forward and get creative with it. That glass I told you we salvaged, we used it in places in wall applications or in frames, but we also ground up some of it and put it in flooring and in concrete and used it as aggregate. So getting creative with what your building materials offer you from what's there is also a really fun way to take sustainability and adaptive reuse to a new level.
Okay, so if engineers are unfamiliar with these methods, how can they learn more about them so that they can use them?
Well, give me a call. I think we've been publishing quite a few papers on this and been really studying this for a while. Adaptive reuse isn't a super new concept, but I think taking adaptive reuse and really applying strong sustainability strategies to it is something that is the wave of the future. One of the things that we also worked with on our engineers, because we had all these high-end spaces, I've never done a college project that only had 3 classrooms in it. Everything was a special use program. So with all of these special use programs between animation and culinary arts, we really worked with them on what should our air conditioning systems be so that we have really low air velocities and quiet and be able to save on our energy costs and hit some of those sustainable metrics. We did manage to get LEED Gold on this project. Um, the we ended up using a chilled beam air conditioning system, which has almost no air velocity, but keeps you comfortable and allows a lot of adjustment. It also allowed a very tight pancake for the area that the ductwork and the air conditioning goes in, which allowed us to keep some of those very tall volumes for some of these special use spaces. I think the exciting thing about this project is how the programs also work together. I talked about how the building stitched into the community, but when you talk about higher ed projects, oftentimes they work in silos. This department is alone and this department is alone. And one of the things that we did that the mall allowed us to do because of the scale of the mall is we set up each department together, but then the entire center of the mall, which would be the space that you used to walk in between the stores, became a space where departments could come together to cross collaborate. And part of that was using the bones of the building in ways that gave us a programmatic advantage. So we'd have a room set up where you'd have lights that you could clip on for drama and high tech for animation and sound systems so that you could come in with the music performance people and play music and do acts and do animations all together. And so really giving students real world environments that are collaborative, because that's how we all function in the real world. None of us work in isolation. We're always asking for 3 experts to come together and do something new. The infrastructure of the mall gave us that big floor plate width to be able to create these cross collaboration moments that are so exciting.